Great. Well, hello everyone. We are at 2:30, so I think we can go ahead and get started. We'll just kind of start with the intros, let people trickle in kind of as they are able to. So again, hello, welcome to the April 2022 Twin Cities Tableau user group. And I first want to say that we have a poll for everyone, and we would really appreciate your guys' feedback on that. And going to launch the poll. Yes, we want to start it. We'll try and keep this poll open, and the idea behind this poll is, what would you guys like this user group to be called? Twin Cities Tableau user group is something that is maybe less known for people who don't live in the Twin Cities, Minneapolis, Minnesota area. And with our world becoming more and more virtual, and we're consistently getting several visitors from other tugs. Today we've got our speakers are from different tugs. We are just kind of trying to figure out if there's maybe a different way to kind of identify ourselves so that we can make it easier for people to find us. So we've got the Twin Cities Tug, which is, what we are right now. Minneapolis Tug would be MSP Tug, good old airport name there, or Minneapolis St. Paul, and then just kind of going with a more generic Minnesota Tug, MN Tug. So feel free to kind of vote on that as time allows. And then just a couple housekeeping items. We appreciate all of you guys coming and joining today. As we are, continuing with this process, we're still trying to work out some of the kinks with the virtual and like hybrid options. So, please be patient with us. Please give us some grace as we're, if someone's on mute or, waiting for screens to pop up or background noises or things like that. So feel free to be engaged with us, but if you aren't actively asking a question, we ask that you kind of mute yourself so that we aren't potentially disrupting, the presenter or someone else asking a question. You can also use the chat option if you do have a question or, want to share something or share a link. It's a really great option as well. So I'll keep an eye on that, and we'll be sure to ask our presenters or anyone else those questions. So with that in mind, there we go. Okay. So today's agenda, pretty standard. Did a welcome. Again, welcome to everyone. We'll go through some upcoming events. We'll do one or two get to know members. We really would like to, kind of use this opportunity to get to know you. Got some really simple questions, so don't be afraid. Please volunteer. We always appreciate it when people volunteer for that, part of the presentation. And then we have some two awesome presenters today. We've got Alice and Ethan. Alice is going to be talking about some of the updates to the Tableau certifications. Been some changes. We had a presentation about it a while ago. I know a couple people have been asking us questions about it, so we wanted to give an update on that. And then Ethan is going to be talking about the layers of data visualization and kind of like what all to think about when doing that. And then if there's time, we'll also do a best thing I learned or group therapy. So if you have a question, about like, how do I add a data label or something like that to a specific chart, feel free to, again, either put it in the chat or let us know. We can do sharing screens. So that's one of the cool things about doing virtual meetings. So again, keep that in mind. Or if you, saw something on Twitter that was like, mind blowing, like, dude, I can't believe, like, how did I not know this before? Feel free to also talk about it then. So upcoming events. I wanted to call out a couple of the tugs, the upcoming Tableau user group meetings. There are so many of them now. If you haven't noticed, there are a lot of Tableau user groups out there covering, anything and everything. So not just geographic based, not just, like the Minnesota, Minneapolis, Twin Cities area, which is something that I think is really cool. It helps us connect with people who aren't necessarily in our region, and we get to learn from different people. So two of them that I wanted to call out specifically are the analytics one on 428, and then the Tableau newbies. This one is really cool. Wish this was around when I was a newbie, because sometimes in the Tableau user groups, it's hard to make sure that we're covering, everyone's level of skill set. And so this Tableau newbies one is specifically designed for people who are new to Tableau, who need to understand or want to learn how to use or think about Tableau. So definitely recommend those. And then also, if you want to have all the Tableau user groups on 526, you can also come to our next meeting, which is like I said, 526, and we are planning on a hybrid one. The location is yet to be determined. And then the big thing is the Tableau conference. But real quick, if I'm guessing y'all already know about this, but if you don't know how to find other user groups, you can go to usergroups.tableau.com, and there are lots of different options to kind of search from, whether it's geography or virtual. They do have an option where it shows like all the upcoming ones, which is really cool. So you can kind of see like how what's coming up next week, instead of like, let me, go find a specific one. And Ethan, I should have asked you this in our stand-up, but I believe that you also have a calendar viz that shows all of the upcoming ones. So is that right?
I do. I'll share that in the chat. It's an awesome resource.
Yes, that one is really cool. So Tableau about Tableau is always fun. So that is a calendar for that one. And so next, Tableau Conference. What is Tableau Conference is basically an opportunity for people who love Tableau, who use Tableau, to get together and either hang out in person or virtually and learn more about Tableau, about data analytics, about kind of the business. So in person is not free. Don't know the price off the top of my head, but the virtual option is free. It is coming up. So if you do plan on attending in person, definitely recommend trying to sign up sooner rather than later. And then the sign up is going to be at tableau.com/events/conference. And so right now, the option is you can like register for it. And then I believe you can see it like all of the sessions, but I don't think that the schedule is published yet. So that's going to be coming out later. But I'm assuming like last year it was really cool where you could kind of see like build your own calendar or something like that. So I'm guessing that'll be around again. And so what do they talk about? The main things are going to be the breakout sessions, which are, I've got a list of lots of different things that you can scroll through and you can see kind of what are the topics. They're going to be everything from beginner level to advanced. You're going to have super technical, super business related, all sorts of topics that are going to be covered. Lots of cool speakers. Definitely recommend checking it out, kind of, poking around and seeing, what are my not miss sessions? What do I have to see? And there is an option to switch between in-person and virtual up at the top. So you can pick which one you're doing. There's also going to be a variety of speakers. Again, lots of cool people to learn from. Lots of people from Tableau, as well as outside of Tableau, talking about how they do analytics at their company, how they implement Tableau, all sorts of things. So definitely recommend checking that out as well. Big one is going to be Iron Viz. So if you're unfamiliar with Iron Viz, it is like competitive dashboarding, which is basically an opportunity for people to, they submit dashboards that they've built off of specific data types. Some leaders in the community vote on who they think it has like the best ones for this year, and they pick 3, and then live those 3 people will kind of build a dashboard, and you get to watch them, and then they're judged on certain criteria. It's always super fun, very exciting to watch. Definitely recommend checking them out. The Iron Viz Tableau people, those dashboards always have something cool in them. I always learn something new from them. I think it was even just like last week, I implemented something from one of the Tableau IronViz winners from like last year, the year before. So definitely recommend, even if it's just like let me get some inspiration. Let me find out what's possible in Tableau. Definitely recommend checking those out. And yes, that is all I had for the Tableau conference. Again, you can always go to the website to learn more. Let me know if there's any questions about the conference specifically. But for now, I think we would like to let's kind of do one get to know a member, and then we can see if there's some time later, maybe in between meetings. And Greg, there will not be a viewing party. Last year we did do a viewing party in person, and this year with like the hybrid and hybrid meetings, we just decided to kind of let people go to the conference and do virtual at home. So with that, can someone volunteer to do a get to know a member? We would like it if you could, share your screen or share your video if you're comfortable with that, but we would like to get to know you. And if not, I'm gonna voluntold someone. So,
I can
Brad.
do it.
Awesome. Thank you, Brad.
You're welcome. So my name is Brad Remington, and this is the first meeting that I've ever been to. So the newbie.
Welcome.
And I work at Entrust in Shakopee, and I am an operations planning analyst. So what I work with is the Salesforce forecasting, revenue numbers, and then I deal with historical and try and forecast data as far as quantity wise. I kind of work with sales, finance, supply chain team, communicate with all of them and try and put everything into units. Of course, finance and company deals with the revenue, but supply chain manufacturing deals with quantities. And we're kind of a custom to build order kind of process that we deal with my segment. I've been using Tableau about 2 years. And so what I do as far as most of my Tableau is into the kind of the bar charts. It seems to be what they all want to see. Some of them kind of like the line charts, but they don't like a whole lot of visualizations in there. It's too busy. So that's what it's kind of good at, is getting into the bar charts and every now and then the line charts. And then it's getting into some of the ones that are a little bit difficult as far as the functions, is getting into that, the date functions, and getting some of that calculations, that because our fiscal year is April through March. Well, of course, the calendar year is January to December. So trying to get, like compared to last year and that, and sometimes it wants to do it if I want to do -1, so I got, similar to the coronavirus, how that is, I got it set up to like a 12-month rolling average, to where I'll do a line graph there and then have a bar chart and see where that, the 12-month rolling average is. So that's what they like to see in that. So that's kind of what it is.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Brad. Thanks for volunteering, and welcome to the community.
Thank you.
Christine, I see you volunteered as well. Do you want to hop on?
Sure, of course. So my name is Christine, and I work for a SaaS company called DataStax out of Silicon Valley. So I am a sales operations business analyst. And one of the things that one of my responsibility is supporting the sales leaders, including the chief revenue officers, in providing sales analytics and sales forecasting data on a daily, monthly, and weekly basis. And so Tableau is something really new to me. And I've been using Tableau since I was at Dell. And so I would say I've used Tableau for like 2 years now, but I haven't been a creator. But my first time using Tableau is creating some reports and dashboards so that it's easy to bring and deliver insights to the sales leaders. So so far it's been pretty good. And working on some projects in the makings. One of the things that I struggle most is learning the features of Tableau and some of the nuances that they have in terms of like, servers, data policy and all that. But, I'm looking forward to learn more and get more advice from the whole Tableau user community.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you and welcome to our group. I definitely recommend checking out some of those Tableau conference sessions. I know that there's going to be some about, they always have ones about like the features, whether it's new features or old features, any of those things. That's definitely going to be a good resource. I think with that, we will go hop over to Alice, who is going to be presenting about the updated Tableau certifications.
Okay, just give me a moment while I get my presentation up and running.
If y'all didn't know, Alice is a Tableau social ambassador. Definitely recommend checking out her Tableau public. She's got some really great stuff on there. So nice little plug there. Take it away, Alice.
Yeah, no problem. Yes, I am a Tableau social ambassador. I love to talk about Tableau. I'm particularly active on Twitter. So if you want to connect to me there, or LinkedIn, if you have questions, I'm always happy to chat. The presentation that I will be doing today is about Tableau certifications, and I'll be providing an overview and what's new with the certifications this year. I'll begin with an introduction about myself. Then I'll move on to why you should become certified and what benefits certification can have for you. I will go over quickly about overviews of each of the exams and what's new, particularly in the last few months. I'll also provide some tips and advice on how to succeed in certification, and then provide some resources to help you study and get you ready to take those exams. Okay, my name is Alice McKnight. I am a senior consultant for PhData. It's located in Minneapolis, but I am in Atlanta, Georgia. I am 3 times Tableau certified. I have 3 certifications currently. I have the desktop specialist, the new data analyst certification, and I also am a certified associate consultant, which is a partner certification. I can be reached at Twitter if you want to reach out to me, and my Twitter handle is right below my picture. Okay, first I want to begin with why certification, why you should consider it if you are not certified, and if you are certified, why you should continue to keep it active, or if it has expired, to go ahead and renew it. One of the main reasons to get certified gives you a chance to display your knowledge of Tableau. Being certified by Tableau lets everyone know that you have a foundation knowledge of Tableau, that you know how to use it, you know how to engage with data and stakeholders, and how to display that data effectively through the tool. And it's a great marker to say that you know Tableau and how to use it. Enhance your resume or your CV. Having the Tableau certification on your resume or your CV lets future employers or your current employer know that that you have been branded by Tableau as a certified user of their product. And that's a way to separate yourself from other people in the community who are also applying for positions or looking for promotions. It's a way to separate you from all those other applicants. Fills in gaps in knowledge. If you hadn't taken any kind of formal Tableau training and you're in a position that you do use Tableau, you may only use Tableau in one certain way, or you may lean on one type of bar chart, or you may lean into only connecting to Excel spreadsheets or only to Salesforce or Snowflake. When you're studying for the Tableau certifications, it expands those gaps in knowledge that you may not even know that you have that gap, or you can get more in depth in the knowledge that you currently have. So when you're certified, it gives you the ability to say that you have knowledge in all these different aspects of the product. Once again, it separates you from others. Not everyone has a Tableau certification. And when people are measuring or evaluating you versus another person, having that certification is one way to separate yourself from them. Keeps you updated on new versions. Tableau, like any other software, is updating all the time. Usually there's maybe 1 to 2 updates a year. And if you are in a position where you only use one of those versions and haven't had an opportunity to see any of the new updates in the latest versions, this gives you an opportunity to become familiar with those new versions, any new features, any new ways of doing things that you may not have the opportunity to do in your current position. What certification doesn't do. Certification is not the only way to measure your Tableau knowledge. There are tons of different ways for you to display your Tableau knowledge. You can have a portfolio on Tableau Public. Other people may be able to vouch for you. They've worked with you before. Your manager or other people who have worked with you in the past can recommend you. You have very specific domain knowledge. If I am working in banking and my background is in banking, that domain knowledge will make me more knowledgeable than someone like myself. My background is in healthcare. Of course, someone with a banking knowledge working for a bank is going to be more qualified for a position if we also have the same Tableau knowledge on our resumes. Having a certification does not make you qualified for a position. There are tons of different ways that you can prove that you are qualified for a position, and a certification does help, but it's definitely not the end all be all way to qualify for a position. A certification is not the only indicator of what it takes to be a successful Tableau developer. Anybody who is building dashboards in Tableau or a designer knows that technical skills are only a small portion of what makes a good Tableau developer. Being able to communicate effectively, being able to problem solve, being able to work with your stakeholders on exactly what kind of business questions you're trying to answer. All those things, plus the technical part, go into becoming a successful Tableau developer. And just having a certification, though helpful, is not the only indicator of that success. Now that we've gone over why you should get certified and what it does not do, I'll give a high level overview of what the exams are. For most users, people will be going for one of the 3 Tableau desktop certifications. Prior to January 2022, there were 3 available. Your beginner level was the Tableau Desktop Specialist. Your second level was your Certified Associate exam. And the third one was the Certified Professional exam. At the beginning of this year, the Certified Associate and the Certified Professional were retired. If you currently hold either the Certified Associate or the Professional certifications, they're still valid until their expiration dates, but you will not be able to renew your certifications if you have one of those 2. After January 22, there's now 2 certifications, the Desktop Specialist and the new Data Analyst certification. In addition to this brand new certification, they did make some changes to a Desktop Specialist that I will go over when I talk about that one specifically. They also made a change in the testing vendor from Loyalist to Pearson VUE. If you're looking to be certified in the server product, there used to be 2 certifications, the Certified Associate as the beginner and the Certified Professional as the advanced version. As of January 22, the Certified Professional was retired. And now there's only the Certified Associate certification. They did make some changes to kind of merge those 2 together, but now there's only 1. And for those of us who work for a Tableau partner, like myself, there are 2 certificates for that, the Certified Associate Consultant on the desktop side and the Certified Associate Architect for the server side. For the changes that happened with the Desktop Specialist exam, the biggest change with this exam is that this used to be an open book exam. You were able to have Tableau open, and also you were able to use Google during the exam, but now it is a closed book exam. And for people who are used to that before, that's no longer available. All the exams do have a price. The Desktop Specialist is $100. They suggest that you have 3 months of experience before you sit for this exam. Once you have this certification, you have it forever. You do not have to retake it. The time that it takes to sit for the exam is 60 minutes. There are now 45 questions, which is up from the 30 from the previous version of the exam. And instead of a 70% passing score, it's now a passing score of 750. At the bottom of the slide, they split the knowledge base for the exam into 4 domains. The first domain is connecting and preparing data, and that's about knowing how to connect to, knowing the different data sources, knowing how to connect to those data sources, the differences between a live connection and an extract connection. The second domain is about exploring and analyzing data, and that's more about knowing calculations and being able to build simple and common visualizations such as bar charts and line charts and scatter plots. Your third domain is sharing insights, and this is how you would format a chart, how to build an interactive dashboard, how to highlight insights with color, things of that nature. And the domain 4 is understanding Tableau concepts, which includes things like knowing the difference between continuous and discrete measures, knowing the difference between measures and dimensions, some of those higher level Tableau concepts. The specialist exam is more about the what things are in Tableau and not necessarily the how of how to do things in Tableau. When you take this exam, when you are done, you will get your results right after the exam. So you will know exactly if you pass right after you click submit. When you take this exam, you are also able to go back and forth through the entirety of the exam. So you can start, go to the end, and have the ability to go back and check your answers and make and review before you submit. The biggest change for this year is this new data analyst certification. It replaces the certified associate and the certified professional exams. This exam has a totally different structure than the other previous exams. And if you're not accustomed to it, it can be a little different if you have experience taking any of the other exams prior. It has a $250 price tag. They suggest that you have 6 months of experience before you sit for this exam. It expires every 2 years. You will sit for it for 120 minutes. And this exam has 3 parts, 2 knowledge-based sections of 15 questions each, and then a hands-on lab in the middle where you will have access to Tableau virtually and be asked to complete roughly 10 to 12 different tasks. The passing score is still 750. It will take 48 hours for you to get your results from this exam because someone does have to actually grade your hands-on section. So it takes a little while for that to happen. So you should receive your results in about 48 hours. Below are the 4 different domains that the test covers. Your first one is the connect to and transform data. This is knowing all of those connections and how to transform data from a desktop specialist. But instead of just asking what those things are, they are going to ask you how to do them and when it's best to use them. The second domain is your explore and analyze data. This is about your calculations, and they're going to ask you another step above the calculations and functions from the desktop specialist. They're going to include things about parameters, table calculations and LODs. Domain 3, the create content. This is from your hands-on lab where they're going to ask you to be able to create any of those basic charts. They will ask you a series of hands-on questions about how to get to a business question and be able to answer it. And that 4th one, publish and manage content on Tableau Server and Tableau Online. This is new from the Tableau Specialist, which does not ask you questions about Tableau Server and Tableau Online. When I took this, I did have a significant amount of questions about Tableau Server. So if you are not familiar about working in Tableau Server, I definitely would suggest getting some resources and learning about that because I did have significant questions about this domain 4. Even though it just says 9%, I guess I had my luck of the draw. I had a lot of questions from this last domain. The exam structure. As I said earlier, Part 1 and Part 3 are multiple choice and multiple selection questions. They're not hands-on questions, so during that portion, you will not have access to the virtual Tableau that you will have in Part 2. In addition to those multiple choice and multiple selection questions, they will have different other questions that are drag and drop. They may ask you some questions that are called building questions, and they're basically putting things in order. They'll give you a task to do in Tableau and give you options of how to complete that task, and then ask you to put them in order. There's also some other drag and drop questions about how to set up a function or a formula. And you will be able to take different parts, move them in order to complete a calculation in Tableau. But the largest part is this Part 2, which is the hands-on lab, where you will have a virtual instance of Tableau. You will have one really large task that they will be able to break down into 10 different sections. What they're grading you on is your final answer and not necessarily how you get there, but they are going to be able to see all the steps you took to get to that final answer. I always suggest to always complete, even if you get stuck in one of the tasks, to always go ahead and go and complete those other subsequent tasks, because just because you miss one part or not know all parts of one question, you may know the other task. On the server side, there were just a few changes. They increased the time from 60 minutes to 90 minutes. The expiration is still 2 years. The suggested experience is 6 months. They did reduce the number of questions from the old exam had 80. This one only has 55 multiple choice questions, and they changed the scoring system from 75% to the scoring system that all the other exams are now on, to 750. The breakdown of the domains of the content that this exam covers is roughly the same from the previous exam. It covers preparation, installation and configuration, administration, troubleshooting, and migration and upgrades. Other tips and advice. When you schedule the exam through Pearson VUE, they will send you a confirmation email with 3 different steps that they want you to go to prior to sitting for the exam. I always suggest that you take that confirmation email and do the system check as quickly as possible before you take the exam. The system check is setting up, making sure that your computer can have a virtual instance of the exam, and so that the proctor can communicate with you. If you are taking this exam on your work computer and you have some kind of blockers, in security, software installed, all those things can interfere with the Pearson VUE download of the exam. So I always suggest that when you get the email, to make sure that you do the system check on the computer that you will be taking that exam on. When I first took the desktop version, I waited until the day of to do the system check and realized that I had something blocking the download on my laptop. I had to quickly choose my personal computer, set that up, and I did that maybe just in time to be able to sit for that exam. And that was just undue pressure that I put on myself right before sitting for that exam. Prepare your testing area. When you take one of these exams, they're going to ask you to take photos of your testing area. They want to make sure that you don't have any materials that you can look at during the exam. There's no other individuals in the room. So if it's possible, set up, a private area in your home that you can take this exam, a place where you can easily clean and move things so that the proctor can say that your room is clear. And depending on who your proctor is, some people are more strict than others. So always do that ahead of time as possible and clear your space if you can, because the proctors can say your room is not in a space where you can sit for the exam. They will also ask you to have your government ID and to have that available, because you're going to have to take a photo of the front and the back to verify your identity. Pay special attention to the wording of questions. If you are not familiar with the way Tableau asks questions, sometimes the wording of the questions can be confusing. So when you take the exam, I always stress that you read some of the questions 1, 2, or 3 times just to make sure that you are understanding exactly what they're asking. They're not trying to trip you up or trick you. It's just sometimes in a matter of way that Tableau asks questions, it can be confusing if you're not accustomed to the way that they word things. Time management. If you're taking the desktop specialist exam, you can, as I stated earlier, go back to the beginning and review your questions. You don't want to spend too long on a question. You're able to, in the exam, to mark a question as I want to go back and review that later, so that you don't spend all that time on one question, and then when you look up and look how much time you have left, you realize you don't have enough time to answer all the questions in the exam. So time management is key. When you're taking the data analyst version of the certification exam, you have 3 sections. You are not allowed to go back to the beginning when you take that exam. So when you take that first portion, at the very end of that first portion, they're going to ask you, would you like to review any of the previous questions in this section? And that will be your last opportunity to go back and look at those questions. Once you decide to go on to part 2, you cannot go back to part 1. So it's very important to, when you're starting that particular exam, to move quickly, but still spend enough time on each question, but also save enough time for part 2 and part 3, especially for that hands-on portion, which may take you a little longer than the multiple choice, multiple selection parts of that exam. Learn to create charts quickly. In Tableau, that Show Me menu that has all of the basic charts, line charts, bar charts, box charts, histograms. Know how to make those quickly, especially for that hands-on portion. And when they ask you questions about specific specific chart types, if you know how to build those things quickly in Tableau in the steps, it makes things a lot easier for you, so that you don't spend a lot of time thinking about how to build things. You can focus more on answering the question and not on the how to do something. How to prepare for the exam. one of the easiest things to do, and I'm sure Tableau is going to say one of the best things you can do, is to use their training. Tableau has a lot of free training available on their website that is very good. Not only does it give you a good intro to all the functions that are in Tableau and in server and online, but it also gets you accustomed to how they word things. So if you've taken some of that free training, you're already helping yourself because you're learning how Tableau words things, and you're also learning directly from the source. They also have a paid bundle that includes access to Tableau desktop and online, exam vouchers, and 90-day access to their training. There are exam-specific study guides that come with each one of the exams. I always recommend download those and study those. They list everything that you need to know to succeed on those exams in that study guide. They're always helpful. In case of the data analyst exam, they have examples of how those new hands-on questions, how that looks. They have short videos of how those different questions will look on the exam, and that will totally help you when you sit for it, to be already accustomed to how the screen looks, how you maneuver through the virtual machine and Tableau. All of that is helpful prior to taking that particular exam. At the end of those study guides, there's 1 or 2 practice questions. Always take a look at those. And at the end, they will give you an explanation of how they came to the answer. Once again, that just gives you practice into how Tableau is going to present questions to you, and getting accustomed to that structure will help you when you sit for the exam. There's also Tableau training on other platforms. Udemy and Coursera all have Tableau certification specific training. PhData also has a training platform. I'm always going to plug where I work. Data Coach has a series of Tableau training courses that are excellent and can help you prepare for the exam. Community-led projects. Tableau has a very active community, and people like myself who are ambassadors lead these initiatives that give you the opportunity to practice building things in Tableau, and that is priceless when it comes down to being able to sit for these exams. Practice, 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 and these projects are ways to get that practice in. Workout Wednesday is a community project that gives a challenge out each week, a Tableau challenge out this week, and you will work to solve that challenge. At the end of the week, they will post a solution, and you can walk yourself through how to recreate that problem. Back to Viz Basics is for your beginner Tableau user. It focuses on one chart type or one data visualization concept for 2 weeks. They provide the data, and you build whatever chart type it is, whether for this week it's a bar chart or a line chart, or if the challenge was to build a text table or how to use color effectively. That challenge is really good for those new to Tableau. Real world fake data is about building business dashboards, and prep and data is about Tableau prep. If you don't have any experience in using Tableau prep, prep and data is a weekly challenge that gives you an opportunity to get accustomed to working in that software. There's some really good content on YouTube, specifically for these certifications. Donna Bell Santos, SQL Bell on YouTube, and Tableau Tim on YouTube both have series on these certifications where they go through practice questions, provide you with their experience taking these exams, and also have really good videos covering concepts that are covered in the exam. And finally, what do you do if you fail? Failing the exam, the key thing, does not equal you're not being a knowledgeable user. You can fail the exam for any number of reasons, but it does not indicate that you do not know the content, that you are not a good designer. Just for that day, on that particular day, you did not pass that exam on that day. That's all that failing exam means for that day. Tableau Tim has a really good video about failing Tableau certifications. He's very honest about which ones he has failed. He is also a Tableau visionary, which is one of 45. He's one of 45 people who have been acknowledged by Tableau as being excellent with their technical knowledge of the product. And if a Tableau visionary can be honest about saying, hey, at this point, I failed this exam for this reason, and this is how I regained my confidence, how I took that failure, learned from it, and this is what I did to have further success with that exam later on. If that can happen to a Tableau visionary, there's no shame or in that happening to you. Well, that's all that I have on Tableau certifications for today. Please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. I recently taken 2 of these, so these are fresh on my mind. Feel free to reach out to me via LinkedIn or Twitter, and I'm happy to discuss with you any questions that you may have.
Don't see any in the chat. Again, yeah, everyone say super helpful. Thank you so much, Alice. Feel free to either unmute yourself or put it in the chat if you do have a question. I will propose a question just to see to get your input on there. What is your opinion about the 3-month, 6-month kind of recommendation? Because sometimes people are using it every day and sometimes they're using it once a week. How would you kind of gauge that or take that with a grain of salt, I guess?
The desktop specialist, it says 3 months. And even for the data analyst one, if you're in the tool every day as part of your job, I think that's, those timetables are good. If you are in the tool not as often, or if you are not using the tool in various different ways, then I would definitely take the time to do more intensive study, more daily study, so that things become more like muscle memory for you. But the timetables that they have on there are good if you're in the tool every day.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think I had been using Tableau every day for like 7 or 8 months by the time I took the first exam, and it was a lot easier. I probably could have done it at 3 months. So for everyone else out there, kind of take those recommendations with a grain of salt, but also, don't feel bad if you're challenging yourself. If you have only been using it for 2 months, give it a shot. Again, like Alice said, there's no shame in failing it. I failed the pro one because I fell into the trap of like, oh, I have to change this color, this label, or and just ran out of time on that one. So again, don't feel bad. You can always try again. And like she said, it doesn't reflect your value or your skill set as a person. So thank you again, Alice. If you have any questions, again, feel free to put that in the chat, and we can, or like Alice said, reach out to her on Twitter. And with that in mind, I think we'll hand it over to Ethan.
All right. Yeah, that was great, Alice. While I'm pulling this up, those tests are no joke. I took the certified associate back in 2018. It was tough. My gosh, I barely got through that thing. But hey, everybody, Ethan here. I just wanted to say thank you to Katrina and the team for the invite. Really looking forward to giving you guys the presentation that I put together here, and hopefully you guys can take some value away from it. But more importantly, I just wanted to thank everybody in the audience for attending today. I know your time is very valuable, so we appreciate you coming and listening to what Alice and I had to say and what Katrina had to present. So thank you again. And like I said, hopefully you can take some value from this presentation and go from there. So just briefly about myself, I'm the Associate Director of Analytics Engineering at Playfair Data. I'm also a co-lead of the Veterans Advocacy Tableau User Group. I'm just curious, are there any veterans particularly on this call? All right, silence is acceptance. There's probably none. Just curious, quick poll there. I'm also a member of the Tableau Speaker Bureau. So really that means that it's just a fancy list where Tableau can pull my name to come speak at events like this or speak at the conferences. I did have the opportunity to speak at the 2020 conference. It was the first virtual one they held. So that was a really cool experience. So yeah, definitely looking forward to this conference as well. I'll be there in person. So if you guys want to network or meet up, definitely connect with me after this and we'll plan for that. So looking forward to it. All right, so what do I have to present today? It's this idea, it's called the 6 components of layered graphics. And really this concept has been around for a long time and kind of unbeknownst to us. If you're using Tableau, you're following this concept every time you open the tool. It's kind of a core competency that's kind of been put into the background of different softwares like Tableau. And it really kicked off and started decades ago when we first started visualizing data in machines. So what are the 6 components of layered graphics? The first layer is data, right? We're thinking of Tableau. When we open up the tool, the first thing it asks us to do is connect to something. And it wants us to connect to some data. So naturally, that's the first layer. The second layer is a mark type. So this is taking that data, and now you're trying to encode your view to a particular chart type. So maybe you're choosing a line chart or bar chart. That's what you would do at this layer. After we've kind of built out a line chart, the next step is to kind of refine that, starting to add in aesthetics like color or size, maybe shape, labels, things like that. The fourth is filtering and subplotting. So there's lots of different filters in Tableau. And then subplotting is just kind of putting together a side-by-side comparison for your users to make better decisions with. The fifth layer is statistics. And this is where you can really start getting into some powerful analytics, some more advanced analytics like predictive data or prescriptive stuff. So this is the fifth layer of kind of this layering graphics approach. And the last layer is theme. Theme is where you would kind of take what you've built, your dashboard or your visualization, and you're going to wrap it and kind of put that professional polish on it. So you can start driving it, adoption of your tools and things like that. So we'll touch a little bit about that as well. Before we get started in detail on each of those layers, I'll briefly touch on just the history behind this idea. Like I mentioned, it's been around for decades. There's a lot of really smart folks out there that have come up with these things. I have to admit, I did not come up with this idea. So I've done some research and it's just been interesting to me. So I figured I'd present what I've learned to you guys. So the most recent kind of book or reference that I've been able to find with this idea incorporated was this book by Hadley Wickham. He authored a famous library in R code, if you're familiar with R coding, and it's basically just a programming language. This library, you can download it into the coding language and it helps you visualize data within it. ggplot2 heavily relies on this layering approach where you're manually coding. You're saying, I want to connect to this data. I want to encode the marks with this chart type. I want to add color to this mark. You're manually doing all that stuff step by step and adding in those layers. But even Hadley Wickham, he kind of picked up on this idea from another author, Leland Wilkinson, who authored the book, The Grammar of Graphics. So this is a really well-known book, and actually Hadley Wickham kind of tips his hat to this other author. He named ggplot2 actually stands for The Grammar of Graphics Plotting Version 2. So that's where he named the library from, is he got it from this book. But like I mentioned, this thing's been around for forever, this idea, really back to when we first started using computers to visualize data. So the earliest reference that I could find was from this book, The Semology of Graphics. And that was back in the early 80s, it was published. So this idea has been around for a while. So after the history lesson, let's go ahead and jump right into the layers in more detail. So layer one is data. Like I mentioned, this is simply just connecting to some data. This layer is pretty self-explanatory. However, there are some core concepts in here that I want to touch on briefly, just so you can get the most out of Tableau. The first concept is this idea between structured data and unstructured data. Unstructured data would be something like this. We're probably all very familiar with a report that looks like this. We have dates across the top. We have some measures, maybe some dimensions on the left-hand side. Everything's kind of reading left to right. We just naturally build these tools like that, right? Like our brains, we want to scan left to right. That's how we typically read, at least in our culture here in America. So that's naturally how we want to build these reports, right? However, a computer, they kind of read everything top to bottom. So they want it in a structured format. So we kind of have to pivot those dates over, pivot those dimensions up, and get everything into this format here. Now, a structured format, it kind of follows these three rules of thumb. The first rule of thumb is every column will represent a unique variable. So we have things like name, age, and gender from my example here. The second rule of thumb is that every row would represent a unique observation. So I have 4 rows here, Anna, Mark, and Max. Excuse me, Anna, Mark, Max, and Carol. Each of those represents a unique individual. I wouldn't want to encode Anna twice in my data, right? That's going to create a duplicate. We're going to run into issues with that later down the road. It kind of defeats the purpose of a structured data set if we're having to clean it once it's structured, right? The third rule of thumb is every cell would represent a unique value, and every cell is going to be filled in, right? We don't want to have any nulls or NA in our data. That's just kind of muddy things up, especially once we start getting into these deeper layers like statistics. Typically, if we have nulls or NA in the data, we're going to have to handle those somehow, right? Or it's going to throw off our modeling. A lot of times that data will get excluded out of the model. So it's almost not even worth having them in there. So it's definitely recommended to get that data in there and get it right the first time once we get it structured. There's different programs that you can use to take unstructured data and get it in a structured format. Some more popular ones like Alteryx, Tableau Prep. You can also use R, Python, or SQL code to kind of grab data, let's say from a data lake. You bring it into these programs, you're structuring it, and then you're publishing it somewhere like a data warehouse or a data mart. So that's kind of the idea and how you would get your data into the structured format. The next kind of core concept I'll talk on is this difference between measures and dimensions. So measures are numeric quantitative values that can be measured. These would be things like sales, or maybe some sort of aggregation, like the sum of sales. A dimension, however, is a qualitative field that would describe our measures, right? So to kind of put them together and see how they're related, let's just give you an example and say I have $2 million in sales. So I might be really feeling very good about that. I have $2 million, that's a lot of money. But let's say I bring in date to describe my measure. And we find that I made $1.5 million last year, and this year I've only made 500,000. I might not be feeling very good about that. So now I'm gonna have to go into my data and kind of use my dimensions and measures and kind of dive in to figure out why. So that's really what drives the analysis, is getting those measures and then bringing in the dimension for context. Okay, so as I go through this presentation, I've created a view in Tableau Public where we can toggle each of these layers on and off. So we're at the data layer, we're at the first layer. I've toggled it on in my view, and we can see I have absolutely nothing. I've just connected to data. I have not done anything with it though. So I've created no charts, no nothing. So we can see that represented here. At the bottom right, I have that toggle. We can see that layer's now solid. So I've turned on that layer. Layer 2 is mark type. And when I say mark type, what I really mean is your chart type on your view. How do you want to encode the marks into your view? So once we connect to data in Tableau, we can open up a sheet and we can drag anything in. And Tableau will automatically assign a chart type to whatever you've brought into the view. So you might get a bar chart, you might get a line chart, maybe a scatter plot. It just depends on the measures and dimensions you bring into the view. But Tableau will kind of automatically encode that for you. But there's other ways to encode marks. One way is from the marks card, there's a dropdown, and you can select this dropdown and you can tell Tableau how you want to encode your view. So you can say, I want a line chart, or maybe a square, maybe you want to encode a bar chart. You could do that right here from this dropdown. The other way is the Show Me tab. From the authoring interface, the Show Me tab is going to be located in the top right hand of your corner of your screen. Once you have some measures and dimensions on your view, you can simply click that Show Me tab, and Tableau's done extensive research on which chart types best kind of define or can be best viewed for the data that you have in the view. So you can click the Show Me tab and it will recommend a chart type based on the measures and dimensions you have. So it's a really easy way to encode the marks. Again, you're kind of letting Tableau do that self-driven discovery for you. However, as we all know, Tableau is a very robust and flexible tool, right? You can create it's almost limitless what you can create in Tableau. So there's a ton of different resources out there and a ton of different chart types that you can build in Tableau. One of the resources that I will go to for inspiration when I'm looking to maybe build something new or to get something else under my tool belt is this resource from Kevin Flaherlidge. It's called the Tableau Chart Catalog, and it literally has 100 different chart types that you can go through and kind of find one that you like. Once you find one, let's just, for example, say I wanted to learn how to build this arc diagram. It's the first chart type here in the top left of that screenshot. If I wanted to learn how to build that, I can simply click on that view. It will take me to the workbook where that view has been incorporated, that chart type's been incorporated. I can then download that workbook and re-engineer it to figure out how that author built that view. Once I have it kind of re-engineered, maybe I can start applying my own data to it. So this is a really easy way to pick up on new techniques and new chart types. But Kevin actually, he kind of put together this catalog using other resources in the community. Another one that's very prominent out there and pretty famous is the Visual Vocabulary by Andy Kriebel. His approach and his resource is slightly different than this catalog. Rather than choosing a chart type that you really like just by viewing them, Andy's will kind of guide you through to select the chart type based on your use case. So say I wanted to visualize correlation within data. From Andy's view, I could select correlation as a use case, and it will tell me all the different chart types that would be used or very useful for visualizing correlation with our data. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the second layer. So we're back at our workbook here. I've toggled on mark type. So we can see my data kind of come to life here. I've connected to data with stock prices. It has the close price at the day of the closing. So I have close price on my y-axis, day of closing on my x-axis, and I've encoded those marks with a line chart. So that brings us to the third layer, which is aesthetics. And aesthetics is really where, as an analyst or a Tableau engineer or developer, this is really where you can start flexing, your chops and driving value within what you're doing. Anyone, like I said, it's very easy to connect the data in Tableau. Anyone could create a bar chart by just simply dragging a few things onto the view. but it takes a lot of skill and finesse to kind of understand these different aesthetics and combine them together to drive those insights and find that action that you're trying to get out of the data, right? So I'll briefly touch on some of these aesthetics. Some are more powerful than others. I would say the most powerful aesthetic that we have in our toolkit here is color. So by simply changing the color of a mark on the view, you can really drive someone's attention to that mark. So if you want to get a point across, or maybe you're just trying to outline some sort of insight, color is a great way to do that. Underneath color, there's kind of these separate, these subcategories or sub-aesthetics. One would be transparency. So again, if you're trying to lighten the cognitive load on your users, you can incorporate some transparency on the view. It also helps just driving that professional polish, and it makes it look really good. So transparency, you can play around with that by simply clicking on the color marks card, and we'll see that opacity slider. They also give us a very helpful percentage where we can hard code what percent opacity we want to incorporate in the tool. We also have access to adding borders onto our marks, which gives us these options for these lines, the line type. So we have, solid lines or dashed lines. All of that can be incorporated right here from the effects under the colors marks card. The next one I'll touch on is shape. Again, if you want to drive some sort of insight, shape is a great way to do that. If you encode a mark on your view with a different shape than the other marks, it's going to draw your user's attention to that. So it's a really easy aesthetic to again, drive the insight into the tool. I'll touch on size. Size is another great one, especially when it's combined with the other two. So for instance, if I colored everything by the sum of sales on a map, well, then maybe I want to size those dots by a different size. So I'll maybe drop population into size. So now I can see kind of how that per capita relationship is with the sum of sales. So this aesthetic can work really handy with some of those other aesthetics I mentioned earlier. The only downfall with size is you're just left with this slider, right? Like, especially if you're trying to you have like two sheets and you're trying to get them at the same size. The only reference we have is that little middle tick in the middle there. Once it pops in there, that's about the only reference you get. I wish there was something a little bit more precise for size. So if any of you guys know of anything like that, I'd love to hear about it. The next aesthetic I'll cover is axes, and your axes are typically overlooked as an aesthetic, in my opinion, from what I've seen. From any axes on your view, you can simply right-click it, and there'll be an option to edit the axes. From there, you'll get this menu. We have range, scale, the axes titles, and all of those different options available to us. So from here, we can change the range of the axes. We can reverse the scale. There's also an option here where you can apply logarithmic function to your axes. Makes it really easy if you're trying to normalize your data for whatever reason. We also have axes titles. This is a great way to simply just add in a little bit more context very subtly within your view. So you can add a title or a subtitle right here from the axes or the edit axes option. These last four, I'm just going to briefly fly through. Some of them are pretty self-explanatory. Label, if you want to label the marks on your view, you can drop stuff to label here. It will encode labels onto your marks. There's other options too. If you don't want to muddy up your view, say we had 365 days, we don't want to label on every single one of those days, right? Kind of defeats the purpose of data visualization. So maybe we just want to encode the min and max. From the labels card, you have the option or the ability to set those kind of rules on your labels. The details marks card, if you drop anything there, it's going to change the level of aggregation in your view. So let's say I had a scatter plot with the sum of sales and profit. If I drug customer name onto details, it's going to encode that at that customer level of detail on the view. So now we would see sum of sales and profit by customer. Tooltip is another great way to encode or to drive context within your view. My biggest helpful hint, I actually learned this from a speaker we had at our group, Don Harrington. You never want to encode just leaving the default tooltip there. You always kind of want to delete that default tooltip because it's just going to say, sales this, profit this, delete that. Put in some sort of sentence that makes sense to your user. So if we're looking at dates and we have sum or sales across different dates, maybe I want to have that sentence say like on X day, whatever mark that is, we made X sales. So just something very simple, but something that makes sense to our end user, maybe not just those default labels. We can also incorporate the InViz and tooltip, which is another great way to drive more context. So that's another great technique to apply there. The last one is angle, and angle is typically referenced with creating pie charts. You know, in the data world, pie charts are, you know, up and down. Everyone has their own opinion. However, once you start getting into some more advanced chart types, you'll incorporate angle quite a bit. So for instance, if I have some sort of radial bar chart, maybe I'm encoding that angle to get that angular feature, that sine and cosine stuff that you have going on in the calculations to make that curvature happen. Also in tandem with path, that's another one that you'll typically start working with in those more advanced polygon type techniques. So that's why I left it in here. So on my view, I've toggled on the third layer. So now we can see color's been added to my line chart here. The green would represent if the close price was positive prior or compared to the last prior day, it gets a green color. If the mark close price was below the prior day, it will be encoded red. So we can see how that kind of comes to life here on the view. Layer 4 is filtering. In Tableau, there's actually a ton of different filters, and they all have their own kind of purpose. What I've brought into this view, if we look at the left-hand side, that is the order of operations that Tableau will process the data that you've connected to. We can see the first two things it processes are filters. One is an extract filter, the other is a data source filter. From the data source tab, which you can find on the bottom left-hand side of the authoring interface, if you click that, you'll see a view very similar to what I have here to the right-hand side of the screen. And at the right hand of that, you'll see an option that says filters. And in blue text, it says add. If you add a filter to a live connection, you're going to get a data source filter. If you add a filter to an extract, it'll be an extract filter. And that'll be the first thing that Tableau processes once it's going through and kind of calculating out your data. The advantage of that, let's say we had 50 million rows of data. If I add a filter at the very top of that, to maybe filter it down to something a little like 500,000 rows rather than that 50 million, it's going to make our tool a lot faster, because now every calculation that runs in our view, it's running on 500,000 rows rather than 50 million rows. So it's definitely going to, enhance the speed performance of your tools if you add in some of these filters at the very top level. The next thing it processes, the third thing actually, is context filters. Context filters are added to the view specifically from a sheet. If you add in a dimension onto the filter shelf, you can simply right-click on that dimension and there'll be an option that says add to context. It will change that dimension filter to a context filter. It's putting it above the dimension filters in our order of operations here. The advantage of that is you're going to be able to create some sort of cascading effect, right? So in my view on the right-hand side, as an example, I have category, which is my context filter. I have subcategory, which is my dimension filter. Well, because that category filter is getting processed first in our order of operations, now my subcategory filter is going to be filtered to only what I have in my context filter. As example, if I filter on just the technology category, my subcategories in the following filter are now going to be filtered as well to only the subcategories within the technology category filter that I have filtered. Also, context filters, just real quick, they're encoded with a special pill. So when we drag things onto the view, we have green and blue pills, not to be mixed up with the matrix or anything like that. This is green and blue, not red and blue. Green and blue pills onto the view. Context filters get their own special encoding. So it's a gray pill that you'll see in the filter shelf that represents a context filter. All right, from there we can add in, and I'll touch on all three of these in tandem. Adding in a dimension filter, we would do that just how we would normally go about it, right? You drag a dimension onto the filter shelf. It's going to give you some checkboxes in that general tab. You can simply checkbox what you want in the view, click OK, and it will filter out the rest. You can also do the exclude button, but we'll save that just for time. Condition and top, if we were to toggle to the condition tab and build out some logic that sets a condition that that filter would be filtered on, that is a condition filter, and it's processed just above the dimension filters. Same thing with the top in filters. So if I go to the top tab from our little menu here, I can set, say I want to see the top 10 categories by some, aggregation, count, sum of something. You can also change it by formula. Once I set that, that is a top in filter. It gets processed above the dimension filter. Again, those dimension filters are going to be encoded with a blue pill. So we'll see subcategory is now it's blue. We have the context filter as category, subcategories are dimension filter. And now we're going to touch on measure filters. Measure filters are, if I added a measure to the filter shelf, it'll typically say, what range do you want? In my view currently, what I've done is I've set the min sales to 10. So everything below $10 in sales is getting filtered out of my view. And I'm only including sales that are greater than 10. So that's an example of a measures filter. The last filter that is included in the Tableau order of operations here is a table calculation filter, very similar to a measure filter, except it's going to be denoted with that delta symbol on the right-hand side of the pill. So you can see I have a percent total in my view. I've added some conditions around that filter, and it's created a table calculation filter in our filter shelf there. So now I have 4 different filters within my view here. Subplotting is pretty self-explanatory. It's a comparison side by side of something. So if we wanted to create a subplot of the view that we've kind of been going through, on the left-hand side, I have a plot of stock A. On the right-hand side, I have stock B. And now I've made it very easy for my user to come in and make a decision. Maybe they're trying to decide whether they want to purchase stock A or B. We can see stock A is going down. So maybe we want to buy that, while it's dropping in hopes that it will pick back up. You can see stock B is also going up. Maybe there's something that's spurring that, that upward swing. Maybe we need to do some research into that company. Maybe there's a merger or something like that going on that would cause that. So it kind of drives that analysis, and we can make a better decision by comparing things side by side. Layer 4, I'm going to toggle that on into our view here. So we can see I've added a filters option for the user. So now they can filter the view by stock A, B, or C. Layer 5 is statistics. I mentioned this earlier, but this is probably the most powerful of all of these layers, where you can really start to drive into more advanced analytics and make a lot of assumptions and context on your data. So from Tableau makes this really easy to add in modeling and incorporate these advanced analytics within the analytics tab. So if we're on the authoring interface in a sheet, in the left, we'll have a data pane. That's going to be a tab that's already open. It will have all your measures and dimensions. There's another tab called the analytics pane. And if we click that, we'll be presented with these options here. You can see that some options in this view are grayed out, while others are filled in. The grayed out options mean there's not enough data, or there's not the right types of data, for instance, the right measures and dimensions on the view to incorporate that model or that summarization. And if you hover over any of those gray options, it will tell you what you need in the view to get those added. So again, another great, easy way that Tableau kind of guides us through this process. So I'll touch on some of these. In the analytics pane, 2 that I like to use often are an average line and an average line with 95% confidence interval. If we were to click on one of these options and try to drag it into our view, we'd be presented with what we see on the right, where it says add a distribution band. This is telling us it's going to calculate that average line at one of these levels of detail. So we can either calculate the average across the entire table, which will be the whole view, or separate panes or individual cells. So it's just the way that the average line is going to get calculated, at what level of detail. Then below that, we have other options. We have column and rows, and we'll see these little pills under them. Columns would be your x-axis, rows is your y-axis. So if you drop an average line to one of those, it's going to draw that average line either vertically on your x-axis or horizontally on your y, or you can drop it to both, where it will create more of a quadrant view. I use the average line specifically when I'm working with scatter plots. By just simply adding an average line to the table, we've now created a scatter plot with a quadrant on it. Say, going back to our example of sales and profit, we really want to push our customers to that top right section, that top right quadrant, right? We want them to have high sales and high profit. So maybe we can start to analyze our customers at the lower quadrant and see how we can get them up there. Those are the kind of insights that you can gain by adding some of these things in there. Another one I like to use is the median with 95% confidence interval. And I use this often in tandem with the average line. So when you look at any kind of distribution of data, if it follows kind of a normal distribution, typically the average and the median are going to be very close to one another. Our data is it has that bell curve shape to it in the underlying data. If we're trying to do any kind of statistical modeling, that's what we would want to see. It's kind of one of the assumptions that we'd have to do for some of the models that we could apply. So adding in an average line with a median line, it'll give us that context, and we have a quick visual way to just see and verify, is the average close to the median? If not, maybe we need to look at outliers, or maybe we need to just start diving into the data and figuring out a little bit more. But that's when I've used the median typically. Another good one is the trend line. So this is a really powerful tool, and this is when we can start getting into some more advanced analytics, right? And Tableau makes this really easy, even for people that aren't familiar with statistics, or maybe it's just been a long time since you've taken one of those classes. But we can drag in a trend line, and we literally have the option to drag it in and create one of these 5 different models within Tableau. So maybe we want to encode a linear line. Again, going back to that non-statistical approach, Tableau has kind of visually given us a reference of what our data should be shaped like to get the best results from these models. So if your data is kind of shaped in this, going from the bottom left to the top right in this kind of linear fashion, probably a linear line. Let's try that. If it has kind of ups and downs or maybe some sort of seasonality, let's try a polynomial and see how that performs. But these are the different ways, and Tableau makes it so easy. You can simply just drag this in, it's going to produce it. You can look at the underlying summary of statistics there, and you can see how that model performs against another one. It's fantastic. So adding in a trend line is a great way to get that context and kind of see what's going on with your data. Another great one I love is the forecast. So Tableau underneath the hood is using a model called exponential smoothing. It's a pretty advanced statistical model, which is used for forecasting. The forecast option, you can simply drag it into the view, and it will forecast a number of periods out from your current period. You can even define how many periods out you want it to forecast. So Tableau makes it very easy to do that. You could simply right-click on your forecast, and you can edit those options within your forecast options there. Another great thing I love about the forecast is if you add it in and your data doesn't have enough context or enough data in there to create an accurate forecast, Tableau just automatically encodes an average line. So you'll just get a straight line across. And that's kind of an obvious sign that there's just not enough data to calculate out that forecast. So maybe we need to get our data at a more granular level. Say we're looking at it in year and we only have 5 years of data. Maybe we need to look at it by month so we can see it, all of those years by month. Maybe then we'll have enough data. We might even need to go down to week to get that forecast. Again, Tableau makes it easy to just click through those options and get down to those lower levels of granularity. Another great model is clustering. The cluster model that Tableau uses is k-means. You can simply drop this model into a view. Let's go back to our scatter plot. Maybe we're trying to find out the different clusters and how our customers are clustered together to kind of make some assumptions about our customers, right? Maybe we want to come up with some sort of marketing to market a particular cluster of customers and maybe move them in another direction on our quadrant. Dropping in this model is a pretty advanced way to get those clusters. So you can have a little bit more precise method of calculating out, which customers are clustered with which. Tableau also makes it really easy to define how many clusters you want it to display. So again, you can simply right click on your model and you can tell Tableau, I want 5 or 2 or 3 clusters, however many you want. However, again, going back to the flexibility of the tool, Tableau makes it easy to do even more advanced things, right? In our top nav, if we click on the help button, there'll be an option that says settings and performance. From there, if you click on manage analytics extension connection, you can connect to different coding languages like R or Python. So now Tableau, with that connection, you can literally write your R code within Tableau. It'll pass it off to maybe an R server to process that, and you'll get the return results. What's fascinating about that, what makes that really cool, for instance, if you're doing some sort of regression, now I have R calculating it out using some sort of model within R, some sort of package, and it's bringing in the results. But now I have access to all the underlying stuff that I would get in R. So I can pull things through like our coefficients or our p-values and bring those right into the tool. So now I can even use those as individual calculations within our tool or individual measures. So it's really, really advanced stuff that you can do with this kind of option. All right, so I've turned on my statistics layer, layer 5. So we can see some things come to life here. I've added a trend line and I've forecasted something. So we can see for stock A, it's forecasting down. The trend line is kind of moving in an upper or bottom left, going up. So that kind of looks good and kind of represents the data pretty well. So now we've added in that statistics layer to our view. The next layer is theme. All the other layers I just touched on, I think Tableau does a fantastic job of. Makes it really easy to connect the data, create a mark type, add aesthetics, filter our data, add subplots, makes it really easy to even add in advanced statistics and statistical model. But if you're trying to do anything on the theme level, simple things like maybe I want a rounded corner on my images, or incorporate some sort of button or some drop shadowing effect to just give my view a little bit of depth. Tableau doesn't do that. It just fails at that. So Tableau has made it a little easy for us to incorporate some of those design by looking at other outside softwares. So 2 that I would recommend, one is Figma. That's the sign to the left hand of your screen. Figma is free to use, so you can go there, create an account, and start creating different design elements for your tools today. It's really easy to get set up, and it's very intuitive to start adding in, rectangles and circles and start building out some of those shapes. The other one is Adobe XD. Adobe XD is paid. It's a subscription service. However, with that subscription to Adobe's Creative Suite, you get access to things like Photoshop and other Adobe Creative Suite software. So it has its advantages as well, because you get access to those other tools. Adobe XD is obviously paid. So my preference is more on the Figma side. That's where I dwell at, but if you can get that subscription paid for, Adobe XD is going to come with a lot more bang for your buck. So going back to our view, I've toggled on my theme, and we can see I've added some architecture around our dashboard here. So I've kind of built in architecture going all the way around and kind of framed it with some drop shadowing. I've added in some headers and labels, so we can see I have a nice header there across the top, maybe some added context on who I am. I've added in labels on our toggles and next to our individual layers. So now I've added in all of that. And really this kind of puts that nice professional polish on your tool. If you're running into issues with driving adoption within your organization on the tools you're using, I'd recommend testing out this theme layer. Surprisingly, we spend a lot of time analyzing the data and crunching through the numbers as analysts. But the end user, if we gave them a table or just a line chart, maybe that answers their question. But by adding a simple theme, it kind of builds that professional polish. It's going to add context. and kind of create that adoption and drive that adoption. As an example, you know, if I was cruising through a car lot and I saw an old rusty car and I saw a Ferrari right next to it, right? I'm probably going to go and check out the Ferrari before I jump in the rusty car, right? Just by human nature, that's how we're built. And I don't, you know, there's nothing wrong with that, but adding in a theme definitely will help drive adoption of your tools. All right, so I'm going to try this and we'll see if I break something in doing so. And I know we're almost out of time, so I'll try to move quick. So I've created this layering graphics in Tableau Public. This is available if you guys want to go there and download it or save it and play around with it. It's available. It has these kind of techniques built in. And now we can do things, you know, I can toggle off aesthetics and we can see what happens when I do that. I could toggle off theme and we can see we kind of lose that professional polish I was talking about. I can toggle through, I can play with my filters, but if I lose that filtering option, you know, I lose that ability to do that. So it kind of drives that, you know, the user would lose that functionality. So within this tool, you can go in here and see how all of these different layers are related to one another. Small things like I turned off aesthetics and noticed that I lost the ability to have a forecast. Forecast is driven off that aesthetic. So we lose that ability to do it. So you can go around, play around with this, and let me know what you think. All right, let me jump back over our PowerPoint here. And I'm going to try to share without going to the very beginning. Okay, nailed it. All right, so I'll just go through these briefly. You know, we touched on certifications earlier. Another great resource out there is Tableau Public. Highly, 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 highly recommend checking Tableau Public out. When I first got involved in Tableau, I was very shy with sharing out any of my work. I didn't want to do that. I always felt like, you know, there's people out there that would judge me. I wasn't very good. So there was just a lot of like anxiety around that. But what I found is the Tableau community is actually extremely helpful. You know, they're not going to come in and knock on your stuff. Typically, you'll get very positive feedback or very needed criticism, and it helps you grow. Another thing I love about Tableau Public that's often overlooked, it's really like the world's like largest data repository right under our noses, right? Like if I'm looking for data for comic books, I can go to Tableau Public, type in comic books. I'm going to find some workbooks on comic books, right? And I'm probably going to find some data that those workbooks are connected to. So maybe I want to reach out and connect with that author. Now we have a shared kind of, you know, thing that we like, comic books. So another great way to just collaborate with others, find something new. Maybe you're looking for data. Tableau Public is just a great tool, great resource. Some other resources at Playfair Data. We do offer a virtual flagship training. I think we're kicking one off this fall. Our Playfair Data blog, go there anytime. We have, I think, over 200 blogs now. So if you're looking for something and you're stuck on something, I guarantee you we've run across it ourselves and blogged about it. So check us out. We also have Playfair Data TV. It's our training course. You can go there. There's over 24 hours plus of video recorded tutorials with Ryan Sleeper. So it's another great resource that you can use to kind of learn and upskill. And then lastly, we also offer consulting. So if you guys are ever interested in working with us or bring us on a project or just need advice, definitely reach out. We're happy to help and team up with you guys. And I know we're like right at time, so I'll just touch on these briefly. Some great community resources too. Flare Loose Twins, I love their blog. What I love about it is they post a lot of things that are like templated. So if you're looking to build like a cool chart, you can go to their blog and download like a Excel file, just plug your data in and it builds it for you. I absolutely love their work. So it's great stuff. I'll finish with that. I know I just flew by some of that stuff, but it's all good. So I'll leave it for questions, open it up for questions. Definitely connect with me. Here's some of my contact info. Ethan at Playfair Data, if you want to reach me up by email, follow me on Twitter, Visual Lang. And then my LinkedIn is the LinkedIn domain, Ethan-Lang. But any questions out there? I'll stop sharing.
I didn't see any questions in the chat. Thank you so much, Ethan, for that. It was such a great overview of not only data visualization, but like what Tableau can do. I feel like if I wanted to take one of the certs that Alice was talking about, I would be ready now. So, you know, if anyone out there is thinking about doing it and was like, oh, Ethan, what about this topic that I didn't know, you know, think about trying to reach out to him or get another one of the resources that he mentioned. I know Ethan is speaking tomorrow at another Tableau user group, so definitely plug that. Ethan, if you want to talk about your chat or put it in the chat as well.
Totally, yeah, I'll put it in there. Yeah, it's at the Veterans Advocacy Tableau user group, actually. I know I'm a co-lead, so it's kind of weird seeing my face each time, and now I'm the presenter, but you know, it is what it is. We'll get there. Yeah, if you guys want to come and see me tomorrow, it'll be at 10 Central. Are you guys Central time or Eastern? I can't remember.
Central.
Central, okay, 10 Central to 12 Central. So check us out. At a very minimum, it's a great group of people. So if you guys want to come and hang out, you know, we're definitely very active. We have active members. We do quarterly challenges as well. If you're looking to get some like involved in some sort of community project, really at the Veterans Advocacy Tableau user group, we're all based on finding veteran related issues and working with veteran run organizations to kind of drive different data community projects. So the last one we just had was for the Tuskegee Airmen. We actually collaborated with Diversity in Data. And then prior to that, we also ran another challenge with an organization called Project Echelon. So it was really fun. We have probably one kicking off in May, maybe. Just I'll plug that. So keep an eye out. It should be pretty exciting. So it's good stuff.
Yeah, that sounds like a great group to get involved with too, especially being able to give back to a community or give back to other people who aren't as data focused. You know, it's always great to make business dashboards, but when you're going to make a fun dashboard or an impactful or meaningful dashboard, it just lands differently. Again, if anyone has any questions, feel free to unmute yourself or put it out there. One last thing that I will plug is that if you are interested in presenting at our user group, it doesn't have to be crazy in depth like what Ethan did. It can be a very simple, can be very in depth, whatever you want to present about. We're always looking for new presenters, new people to just share their experiences, share their stories. Could be something like, you know, this is something I struggled with and this is how I solved that problem. Could be about a new feature in Tableau, could be something cool you learned, or maybe if you go or attend virtually one of the sessions at the Tableau conference coming up that you thought was really cool, you could, you know, feel free to present on that or reach out to us. Yeah, so I think with that, I'll check real quick if there are any questions. We'll give a last call for questions. And again,
if you guys have anything after too, feel free to connect on LinkedIn or anything like that.
Yeah, and if you didn't already see in the chat, we will put a recording of that in our Twin Cities LinkedIn group. So you can always rewatch it later. But I
do have one question. This is Brad.
Yes.
So once we create a dashboard, okay, a Tableau dashboard, and now all of a sudden I add a filter on one of the sheets. And now I want to add that filter to the dashboard because, of course, once you create the dashboard, it'll bring those filters in. How do I add that filter that I added on the sheet to the dashboard without, say, doing an action?
Like adding it across multiple sheets?
So I got it on multiple sheets, but I've already created the dashboard. And so what I did was I added this filter to the filter pane.
Mm-hmm.
And now I want that filter, which I have that filter applied to all the worksheets. How can I get that to show up on the dashboard?
It's just a right click, Brad.
Yep.
Oh, it is.
Ethan, maybe do you want, I don't know if anybody has Tableau open. Actually,
yeah, I'm trying to pull up something real quick. Without showing all my related stuff. Give me just a second and I'll show you how to get that on there.
Hide the proprietary data.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm just trying to pull up the one I just previewed today.
Yeah, but Brad,
All
you
right,
know,
let
like
me
that little drop
share
down
that.
carrot, like when you go to the sheet on the dashboard, and then you'll
Yep.
get the option to go to filters, and then it'll list all of the available filters that you can put out onto the dashboard.
Okay.
Yeah, so, you know, I have multiple filters here. If I
Yep.
wanted to
So now
from this
say that
one
you
sheet,
want to.
I could apply it to multiple sheets. So typically, if you want one filter that's going to work across multiple sheets, what I would recommend doing is adding that filter to a sheet, coming in here, right-clicking on the filter in the filter shelf. You can go to apply to worksheets,
Yep.
and you can either apply them across the entire data source or specific sheets, however you wanted to do it. Now, once that's applied, I can come back out to my dashboard. I can click on any of those sheets where that filter is applied. If you click on this little carrot, it'll open up this options. And from here, you can add in filters. So if I go to this filters, I can go to my layer filter that I was just on. And if I click that, it's going to add it into my view somewhere here on the dashboard.
Okay. Okay. Because
Does that
after I created that dashboard, I went to that sheet and added another filter.
Yep.
Yep.
You just have to go back to the dashboard, go to that little drop down carrot that Ethan is showing,
Yep. And filters.
and
Yep.
then grab the filter and it'll show up there. So.
Perfect.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
You can also go analysis and then filter and add a filter that way if you want to do it like through the top menu. But like many things in Tableau, there's multiple ways to do the same thing.
Totally. Yes. Any other questions out there? All right, I'll stop sharing.
Well, thanks, Brad, for your question. Again, anyone feel free to ask questions or reach out to us. I think that we are at time. I think we'll call it and let everyone enjoy the rest of your evening. So thank you very much again for joining us. Thank you to our presenters. Big shout out to you guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Katrina.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Ethan and Alice.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody.
Bye.